What's going on, guys? RBG here, bringing you more coverage on the recently announced Transformers Rise of the Beast. The season for Transformers news has officially begun, and you guys can expect a slew of coverage from me pertaining to this particular project. And this feels like the year of the beast, right? If you've been following everything revolving around TF Media lately, then you're more than likely looking forward to the upcoming Transformers Kingdom series that'll be premiering on Netflix. The biggest draw this series has going for it is the fact that it will be featuring characters from Transformers Beast Wars. So if you're trying to wrap your mind around how well the beastformers will pair up with the G1 alumni, this show will give you a taste of that before Rise of the Beast hits theaters. Or if you want something that isn't restricted by a certain number of episodes, you can read the IDW comics where we see the likes of Optimus Primal interact with the OGs. Speaking of the OGs, I love how the more recent films are based on their respective eras the original shows they were based on first aired. Bumblebee takes place in the 80s, which is when the original G1 Transformers made their debut, and Rise of the Beast will take place during the 90s, which is when the Transformers Beast Wars first aired. The show ran for 3 seasons and 52 episodes from 1996 to 1999, and it took place in the future on a dangerous planet. The show starred the descendants of the Autobots and Decepitcons fighting for the future of their two factions. In reality, they waged war on a prehistoric Earth, where notably no humans existed. But as it's already been reported, humans will in fact be a primary component for this upcoming movie. So the plot won't be following the original source material, at least in terms of the origins of the Maximus and Predacons. Paramount shared the title of their next big budget sentient robot blockbuster during a virtual production kickoff event. They issued a statement saying, and I quote, "Returning to the action and spectacle that first captured moviegoers around the world 14 years ago with the original Transformers, Transformers Rise of the Beast will take audiences on a 90s globe-trotting adventure and introduce the Maximals, Predacons, and Terracons to the existing battle on Earth between Autobots and Decepticons." So as you hear, this does confirm that Paramount wants to inject some of that Bay formula into this movie. Back in March, it was reported that the film's budget would be in the range of $200 million, which is approximately equal to the budgets of each prior Transformers live-action movie, excluding Bumblebee, whose budget was around $100 million. It was also reported that it would be filmed in Canada for 11 weeks before heading to Peru for the next portion of the filming. So Paramount seems to be trying to recapture that same essence that the Bay films went for, where you have a lot of action and we take the fight from America to some foreign country where the likely MacGuffin or main object will be located. And I'm hoping they don't rely too heavily on this particular formula. Like, even though it brought the franchise massive success at the box office, it ultimately bogged the movies down, leading many fans to walk away from it. It's also important to note that the executive producer Lorenzo Di Bonaventura, who was a big advocate for that formula, is actually tied to this film, unlike the future animated film that's set to be released in 2023. So it does raise a bit of concern on if the production team is going to overextend themselves with things most fans hated about the Bay films. Anyways, during the kickoff event, Lorenzo stated that it felt like the prior movies had exhausted the Autobots vs Decepticon conflict, and he and the other creative minds wanted to show different tribes of Transformers. And I agree with this statement to some extent, but I think the Autobots vs Decepticon war still had plenty of life in it. If you ask me, Bay and the producers barely even scratched the surface with these characters. Instead of focusing on the robots, they chose to hone their attention on the humans, which completely pulled the rug from under the Autobots and Decepticons' feet. It's just so weird hearing Lorenzo say this when he previously stated that the Maximals and Predacons wouldn't fit in these movies. He's the same guy who claimed that a solo movie / origin story for Optimus wouldn't work because according to him the character isn't popular enough. So hopefully the addition of the Beast era cast isn't a last ditch effort to sell millions of tickets at the box office. I think we can all agree that restarting from the very beginning when the Autobot Decepticon conflict took place on Cybertron would have been a perfect reboot for the franchise. Even though the movies have featured a slew of iconic characters from both factions, there's still more than enough to play around with the Transformers roster. Speaking of the roster, I know you guys are probably wondering which robots will make the cut and who will be the ultimate baddie for the movie. I thought it'd take a while to get this info, but apparently it looks like we have some of the cast and the roles they'll be playing. Tformers.com, which is a reputable source that I highly recommend you check out if you want news on all things Transformers, recently revealed all the details we've been asking about. And I just want to give a heads up that if you're one of those individuals who's serious about avoiding spoilers, you might want to click away from this video, because there's a lot of info that may or may not hamper your expectations before you see the movie. So you've been warned. Anyways, a couple days before this movie was officially revealed, there were reports that the Beast Wars cast would be featured. After he was allowed visitation on the set, Transformers enthusiast Proto Man confirmed this, and he mentioned that he knew which characters would be featured in the movie, but due to an NDA, he couldn't disclose the information. But now that the curtain has been lifted, we now have the official roster for the robots. Firstly, we gotta get the obvious two out of the way, those being Optimus Prime and Bumblebee. The article from Tformers.com says that the main lead character / hero will be G1 inspired Optimus Prime, and apparently he'll look much like he did in Bumblebee. They are going back to what we are familiar with the G1 era before he was in the Bay films, so this suggests that this and Bumblebee are soft reboots and aren't full-on reboots. They'll still exist within that Bayverse continuity, even though it contradicts everything that was established in the tie-in comics and even the movies. I feel like Paramount is still reluctant to fully restart from the ground up, and they're trying their best not to lose fans, because even though the Bay films left a bad taste in a lot of viewers' mouths, there's still a devout fan base that still wants to see the story continue. I'm just hoping that this movie doesn't come back to bite them in the butt, because there's only so much you can write when it comes to prequels that lead up to a well-established and somewhat complete timeline. So they're essentially going to have to jump back and forth if they want to keep certain characters around who will inevitably die in the future. Anyways, it's said that Optimus is new to Earth and learning what he's doing there and his relationship with the humans. In regards to Bumblebee, he's shown as a Z28 model Camaro with a lot of off-road upgrades, such as big knobby wheels and roll bars, etc. And I initially assumed the studio would go with one of the third generation 1990s Z28 model Camaros, since this film takes place during the early 90s, but it sounds like they're going for a more monster truck aesthetic featuring the old kind of classical 80s Camaro. To this day, B has had the most vehicle forms, and I don't think anyone is taking his #1 spot anytime soon. But moving on, the next batch of G1 bots we have are RC, Mirage, Nightbird, and Scourge. Like her Revenge of the Fallen incarnation, RC will feature a motorcycle alt mode, except instead of having the wheel as her feet, her robot mode will be similar to her look from Transformers Prime, and her head will retain its G1 design. Mirage's alt mode will be a silver Porsche 911, and apparently he'll be able to transform into other kinds of cars, and he's said to be very friendly with the humans. Now this one is a frustrating one, because when you hear that Mirage is going to be a Porsche 911 and a silver one at that, you instantly think of my boy Jazz, which I don't understand for the life of me why this character hasn't been brought back in the more recent TF films. Like Optimus, who featured a pretty faithful G1 head sculpt in the Bay films, Jazz also looked pretty faithful to his G1 counterpart. He even had the wheels at the back of his feet. Considering the fact that these films are essentially prequels, you'd think you'd see him on that Cybertron scene in the Bumblebee movie, or they at least feature him in this upcoming film. But once again, our boy gets shafted. Anyways, when it comes to Nightbird, whom I'm assuming will be the rival to RC or she'll be a neutral player, she'll be very faithful to her G1 counterpart. She's going to be a ninja with an alt mode that's said to be a Skyline GTR. As for Scourge, he's said to be a robot with a super scary looking giant spiked hand, and he has fire emanating from his body and smokestacks coming out of his shoulders. From what I've been hearing, this guy will essentially be the connective tissue for the newer movies and The Last Night. If you're familiar with the 86 TF animated movie, you might remember Scourge as one of Unicron's deadly sweeps, and apparently he's going to serve the same role in this film, and he could potentially expand on the origins of Unicron. Like outside of TF5, we don't really know much about Unicron in the live action filmverse. I feel like these prequel films could shed more light on him as well as build him up more if we're going to have a continuation to The Last Night. But I guess we're going to have to take this particular rumor with a very small grain of salt. But moving on to the Maximals, we have Optimus Primal, and he's going to have his traditional beast form, which is a gorilla. He's going to have a weathered and old look, and apparently the producers are going to use the unused concept that was intended for Transformers The Last Night, except instead of being completely metallic, it will feature more fur and organic touches. So this one sounds like it's gonna go for more of a Beast Machines-like aesthetic, where you have this very techno-organic look. Like, I'm pretty sure I can visualize what he'll look like in motion since the old concept art has been around for years. I'm just ready to see what he looks like in his robot mode. Like, I want to see how it differs from Optimus Prime. I also want to see how they scale the size of the Maximals compared to the Autobots. In the original Beast Wars series, they were way smaller than the G1 cast, but there have been a few exceptions where the characters like Optimus Prime will have been the same height as OGs like Hot Rod, so we'll just have to see where that goes. But moving on to the next confirmed Maximal, we have Air Razor, whose robot mode is very faithful to her Beast Wars design, and like Optimus, her Beast mode will be very rustic and aged. And hearing these specific details leads me to believe that Maximals and Predacons have been on Earth for hundreds, maybe even thousands of years, while the Autobots and Decepticons have been battling on Cybertron for that amount of time. And I wouldn't be surprised if they've never really encountered humans before until the main human protagonist shows up. But the last confirmed Maximal we have is Rhinox. He's said to look organic but has lots of heavy metal plates and mechanics. So yeah, those are all the confirmed individual robots we have so far. As it's been mentioned by Paramount, the Terracons will also be a faction in this film, but they'll be against everyone, including the Decepticons and Predacons. According to Screen Rant, Scourge will be serving as their leader, and I'm hoping this will be some sort of a one-off, at least for the Beast era characters, because as I mentioned earlier, it seems like they've been on Earth for a very long time, so it would be nice if they make this movie their introduction that could ultimately lead into a spin-off. Like Bumblebee was a spin-off that essentially served as his origin story, so I think that method of storytelling would work wonders for the Maximals to see if they work within a realistic setting. Now, as far as the voice cast is concerned, the only confirmed role we have is Peter Cullen as Optimus Prime. When asked if we could see some original voice actors make their return to the Beast Wars cast, Lorenzo said that they'd love to, but they can't announce it yet. And that's most likely because the voice recordings usually get added in post when the CGI is getting made. I would hope that Paramount makes the right move and at least hires Gary Chalk and David Kay as Optimus Primal and Megatron respectively. They're essentially the definitive voices for those particular characters, and for a while they were holding it down for Megatron and Optimus before Michael Bay brought Peter Cullen and Frank Welker to voice the characters again. These guys are Canadian talents, and the film just so happens to be filmed in Montreal, so Paramount really needs to work out some kind of deal to bring them back. It's also worth mentioning that Gary Chalk was recently on a Paramount project, that being the Sonic the Hedgehog movie, so he has more than enough experience for voice acting and as an on-screen actor. But with that, I'm gonna go ahead and end this video. There's still a lot of details regarding the humans, among other things that I didn't get a chance to cover in this video, because if I did, I'd be here all day. So I'm gonna go ahead and leave the link in the description for those who want to read it in full. But anyways, what are your thoughts on the cast and vehicle modes we have so far? Do you think we could see the likes of Cheetor possibly be included? And do you think this film will connect to TF5? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, I ask you to like or dislike the video. It doesn't have to be a thumbs up, it can be a thumbs down. Any feedback is good feedback and will only help me improve on future videos. But if you really enjoyed the video, it would help me out tremendously if you shared it with all your friends and followers on social media. Sharing really makes a difference. Also, if you're into anime or movies, me and my fiance have a reaction channel, and we have a Patreon that features every reaction in full with no edits. So if you want to see our reactions or simply show your support, you can become a patron for as little as $1 a month. But once again, this is your boy RBG signing out on another video. I'll catch you guys later. Peace out.